Welcome to Innovation and Leadership. I'm Jess Larson. Back with my favorite mini-series, Longevity for Investors, with an amazing co-host, Dr. Greg Bailey. If you're not familiar with Greg, he's had some pretty incredible successes in the biotech world, including selling one of the top cancer medications, specifically for prostate cancer, for $14.3 billion. He was an investor in, and also at Biohaven, top migraine drug for $11.6 billion. Greg, I know that the person we get to have on this week is someone you have in high regard, so I'm going to let you start with the intro.
Yeah, very much so. It's the president and CEO of the Buck Institute. I'll let Eric explain what the Buck is and the extraordinary opportunity for people to interact with the Buck, to learn about geroscience, the science of aging, but also to support what he's doing. And I've had the pleasure of in-licensing two of our drugs at Senescence from the Buck and with Eric. So it's a great honor as a physician, scientist, and now also doing the administrative aspect to welcome Eric to our show. Eric, first off, why don't you tell people about the Buck and how they might support what I think is one of the most important aspects, and that's preventative medicine that's associated with anti-aging that will literally change their lives, every member of their family and friends, and so why it's so desperately important, and how the Buck is the foundation, or one of the institutes that are foundation.
Well, first, good morning to both of you, Jess and Greg, and delighted to be here, and thank you for the opportunity to share what we're doing with you. So just a few words about the Buck. The Buck is a not-for-profit research organization. So we are at the early stage of the whole life cycle of discovery that eventually leads to interventions in humans. So we conduct research on the basic biology of aging. We have about 300 people here. We have been in business for about 20 years. We have an annual budget of about $65 million. Half of it actually comes from the government. It's NIH funded, which we take with a badge of pride because it is a recognition of the fact that our work is validated by our colleagues, other scientists. But frankly, the NIH system, the way it works, is not set up for truly innovative work. It is, the joke is that you only get a grant when you finish doing the work. And quite often, along our work, we make discoveries that require investments and really taking a chance in a significant new area. And the aging field right now is it's just amazing because there are so many opportunities that we all feel. And I know, Greg, we're in this together. Just the early dawn of a whole new way of looking at medicine and so on. And the Buck has taken a somewhat different approach from most academic institutions in a way that I try to run it as a business. I have a partner that Remy Gross, who has deep business experience as a serial entrepreneur. And Remy has really helped in catalyzing the next step. So when we make a discovery, we take a very active stance in really pushing it to the market. And that means partnering with Juvenescence and others to really take these discoveries and participate in the whole process. And many academic institutions will make the discoveries and they'll hand it off to someone. And sometimes it works, and most of the time it doesn't work. And we feel that we want to be part of that part of the development as well. So in some way, I think that I hope it encapsulates who we are. So of an academic institution that studies basic biology, but we, again, building right now what we call a translational center, which is focused on really bringing all of these discoveries that we've made for the last 20 years in the biology of aging into humans.
I think that's very important, Eric, because so many of the institutions aren't focused on, they're focused on the science, but not on the commercialization. And fundamentally, we want products that are materially going to affect people's lives. And the buck does that. And accolades to you since you became president and CEO. I know that's been a huge focus with Remy Gross. And so the two-part question, if you're a grant, I mean, obviously you'd like donations from people. The more money that comes in, the faster you'll do the recovery. And when I first met you, I think the budget was 38 million. So it's made huge leaps and strides based on the fantastic science. So how do people do that? How should they think about investing in something? Because many of the things, as you said, are early stage and are just translating, from animals to humans, which what translation means to me anyway. And then I'm going to follow up after you answer that with what are the exciting areas that you are working on these days at the Buck. But as far as people donating and people investing, how should they think about it, given that the Buck has these unique opportunities?
So these are two sides of the same coin that we just discussed, which is 50% of the budget comes from, as I mentioned, from the NIH. The rest, we have a small endowment which provides some stability, essentially pays our mortgage on the building, but the rest essentially I have to raise. And raising meaning, we look for two types of money. One is, and they're both equally important. One is targeted funding. Someone will come. A good example I'll give you is Nicole Shanahan came to see us and wanted us to build a center focused on female reproductive longevity. And so we did it. First center that focuses on women reproductive biology, understanding what is menopause, can we delay it? This has big implications in terms of women's health. And we've built the first center with close to $30 million that we've received from her. And we're growing this now into a full initiative that is going to be focused on women's health and aging. So that's
Fantastic.
one way. So and we've had a lot of people come and see us. That's the easiest money to raise, which is the sort of targeted funding. Another area that is really key is every scientist at the Buck, and this is in contrast to many other research organizations, receives from the Institute some funding independently of their own funding from the NIH. That is what we call risk capital, which means it's money that each investigator gets to do whatever they want with, take a chance, test this crazy idea, hire this one person. It's not a huge amount of money, but it makes a difference. It really gives them some flexibility instead of always being sort of hamstrung by what grants they have. So that's one area that we're actually really trying to grow. And the beauty there is that it's sort of semi-targeted. And the way we are doing this is we allow a donor to come in, look at our whole faculty portfolio, hear about what their work is. We actually have a book that describes all of these projects and say, well, I think this excites me. For example, you're interested in senescence or senolysis. You can actually come and work with a lab that's really focused on this.
Can you explain to people what senescence is? Can you explain senescence to people and the NIH and then continues?
Yeah. So the NIH is a federal agency. It's part of the Human Health Services. It has an annual budget of about $48 billion a year. It is the gem of American science. This is what has created all of the revolution that we have today in healthcare in terms of, that we're all benefiting from. There's a part of the NIH, it's called the National Institutes of Aging, which is where we get most of our funding. But what's interesting to note is that most of the NIA, National Institute of Aging funding, goes to Alzheimer's. The part that's focused on the basic biology of aging, a lot of what we do, is really small, way too small. We can talk about evolution later if you want, because I think that's another new big player in the field. So a relative underfunding of all aging-related science. This is what people should know. And why? Timing, lack of understanding, prejudice. I mean, all of the things that make society sort of click slowly. So that would be summary for the NIH. Is that what you had in mind? You think
No,
it
it's
makes it
excellent. And
clearer
senescence,
for your
if
audience?
somebody wanted to invest in senescence, what is that?
Yeah. Now, senescence is a process that it's a cell program. So everyone in your body, every cell in your body has this program that's built in. Think about like an algorithm. If the cell detects that it is under stress and some really unique stress, for example, it starts dividing too fast, like a precancerous cell, it has a program to shut itself down automatically. And believe it or not, this starts when you are in your 20s because you might get some UV light. You go in the sun and you make a mutation in your DNA, and bingo, that cell, you activate an oncogene and that cell starts dividing and becomes precancerous. Well, there's a program that shuts it down. The cell goes down into resting, it stops dividing, and it signals to the immune system to come and get rid of it. And so that's a protective mechanism. What happens during aging is that the removal of these cells by the immune system becomes somewhat deficient. So they slowly accumulate and everywhere in your body. So we see over aging in all organisms, the burden of senescent cells slowly increasing. And you might say, well, this is okay, they're still senescent. Yes, they are, but they're churning out all of these inflammatory molecules, and they contribute to something that we call the chronic inflammation of aging, because inflammation itself then becomes a driver for all the chronic disease of aging, heart attack, stroke, cancer, many forms of cancer. Paradoxically, the mechanism that prevents cancer at the first place eventually, contributes to further cancer development. Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, osteoporosis, macular degeneration. I mean, you just name it. All of these chronic diseases that we know are associated with aging are all in parts associated with an increased burden of senescence. And so out of this came the idea, which was pioneered by one of our scientists, Julie Campisi, who sadly passed away this year. She was really sort of the godmother of the whole senescence field. She came up with the idea, what if we were to take a drug that would selectively kill the senescent cells, in some way replace what the immune system is not doing very well? And so lo and behold, when you do this, either using genetic tricks or using small molecules, you actually eliminate the senescent cells, the animals live longer, and they're protected against all of these diseases of aging. And so that led to the creation of a company called Unity, came out of the Buck as one of our first startup. It went through a bit of a rough time with clinical trials, but the last stories I've heard from them are that it is working in some specific indications. So I'm really hopeful that, and obviously we're not the only ones working in this field. There are a lot of people, a lot of activity, as you know, dozens of companies actually involved in the senescence field. One of those is going to hit the mark and develop a new drug.
Huge. So the investing, they can do grants, they can do targeted money towards something. They can take a pet project when they go through your book and do it. Then there's corporates who come in and like a product and are able to finance it. Jess, I'm sure this has stimulated some questions from you. So over to you, sir.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely going to have to do a second episode because I've got way too many questions.
Okay,
But,
good.
I think one of the ones, maybe as maybe a change of gears here, my family and I have been experimenting with the cognitive switch product that's available on Amazon, and it's interesting because I've heard about it from Greg, and so I've been hearing about you for like quite a while, and so it's fun to actually meet you. We recently, Greg and I got to interview Brianna Stubbs and talk about ketones, but I would love to hear from you, like, what is special about this formulation, and why? What are some of the health benefits people might be hoping for taking cognitive switch?
Yes, thank you. I recently I was looking back because this is a product that I designed actually now 8 years ago, and found a partner with Greg to develop and bring to market. And it was an amazing story, and maybe I can sing the praise of Greg. I mean, you mentioned all of his achievements, but I saw how this actually works when you work with him. He got things done. It was really interesting. So we've worked for a number of years. My lab works on understanding how nutrition influences aging. And the way it does is through what we call epigenetic mechanism. So, you have your genes that are encoded by DNA. Um, uh, these genes encode proteins, and every single cell in your body is the same, has the same DNA. So the question is, how do you make a neuron in your brain and a heart cells and a red blood cells that carries oxygen? How does that happen? Well, it happens during development that there's a whole other layer of regulation above the DNA. It's called epigenetics, and I'm sure some people in your audience have heard this. Is sort of become a catchy term, even though most people don't really understand what it means. And so this layer of regulation, epigenetics, not only plays a key role in development, but also plays a key role in our ability to adapt to everything. And I tell people, you think of yourself as the same person throughout the day, but your body changes dramatically. Every hour there's things going up, things going down. If you walk into a room and you have an unpleasant conversation, your whole epigenetic regulation in your brain changes. Your mood changes. Sometimes it takes hours to, get out of it. I mean, you've all experienced. Sometimes, you get in a bad mood for some reason, it just stays with you, or you worry. The same thing with your digestive system. Food comes in, it just triggers a whole series of adaptations. So we studied the interface. How does this happen? How does your body sense the environment in such an exquisite manner? And what are the consequences of this about aging? Because in some way, what happens throughout the day also becomes a portal for you to access and change the way your body functions. And I always love to remind people that your longevity is 93% determined by your lifestyle. 93%. So you can't blame your parents unless they're centenarians, which means that most likely you will be a centenarian too. But for the rest of us, if you don't have a centenarian first degree relative, most likely you are, how you live is going to determine your longevity. And the key question that we've been addressing, so we've been working on these enzymes that are the mediators of these response. They sense the environment and they transduce a response. They change the way your body operates. And one of those, we discovered that it was a paper we published in Science in 2011, I think, found that the major ketone body, beta-hydroxybutyrate, was an epigenetic regulator. And that paper was probably one of the most important ones that I've published, and it was a lot of fun, and to actually put your finger on something that no one's ever seen. But we followed the whole story in terms of why are you laughing, Greg?
No, it must be an amazing feeling to discover something that no
It
one
is
else
an
has
amazing
seen.
feeling. It's we don't have it. I mean, it happens to every scientist, not often enough, but when it happens, it's really, you heard about this eureka moment. It's like, oh my God, this is actually, because you come up with the idea, the hypothesis, and then you say, no, it cannot be. And then you do it and it actually works. And that's the moment where you realize, wow, this is actually true. Most of us have, I always tell people, ideas are very cheap. I have a million ideas every day, but the ones that actually stick are the ones that are really hard that's the hard process anyway. So we knew that beta-hydroxybutyrate, I'll call it BHB for now, it's a bit more simple. BHB, which is the major ketone body, was an epigenetic regulator. And so that sort of triggered a whole series of questions. Could that be the mediator of the beneficial effect of the ketogenic diet? And so could a ketogenic diet increase lifespan? And so the first experiment we did was to put mice on these ketogenic diets. Actually, essentially, we fed them Crisco. It sounds pretty horrible, but it was highly ketogenic. And we did it 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. And lo and behold, these mice actually appeared so robust. They kept their memory. They have no, their lifespan was long, median lifespan was longer. And, we were reassured also because we found out just about as we were ready to publish that another group at UC Davis had found exactly the same thing. And so we actually, something that happens rarely in science, we coordinated so that nobody would hurt each other, and submitted the two papers together and published together, two independent papers, which essentially, made the point that this is true. Completely different methods, different mice, different labs, everything. And so the question then became, should everybody go on a ketogenic diet? And, to maximize their lifespan and their health span. And I've been on a ketogenic diet for a number of years, and it is a hard diet to be on. It's very restrictive in terms, you cannot eat carbohydrates, basically. No fruits, no pasta, no bread, none of the things that, I can add some spice to life. And on top of it, the ketogenic diet has gotten somewhat of a bad name because of the Atkins diet, which was the early version, which was very rich in saturated animal fat, and which, frankly, I don't think is a healthy diet. There are other versions now, the ketotarian diets, which are more plant-based. And I think they're not unhealthy, but they're not compatible with the normal sort of sampling of one of the things that I think is the most important aspect of human culture is food. And everything becomes a little bland, at least to me, when I go on a ketogenic diet. So we came up with the idea, could we actually isolate the most simple thing that happens during a ketogenic diet, which is your level of BHB rise, and just give this to people? And we were not the first one to come up with the idea, but our data sort of renewed the interest in trying to say, can we do this? Well, you could say, well, maybe you could just ingest BHB. The problem, if you do this, it doesn't last very long. So you can buy it, and some companies, believe it or not, selling it, so-called ketone salts. You buy them, you take it, within an hour it's gone. And I do not think that you get any beneficial effect from this. So we toyed with different ways of delaying absorption, and so the thing that we came up with was to make an ester, which just means a link, the BHB, with another molecule. And we chose a very specific molecule called a fatty acid. The reason is that this fatty acid itself, once the molecule is cleaved by your body, so you ingest the ester, it's cleaved in your intestine, the BHB gets absorbed, so you get instantly into ketosis. Within 30 minutes, you will be in ketosis as if you had been fasting for 36 hours. And then the fatty acid goes to your liver, and it helps make new ketone bodies. And it makes not only BHB, but it also makes acetoacetate. And this is something that, we think also could be playing an important role, because there are two different forms of ketone bodies. And so, the first generation of I designed these on on a napkin, and about 20 of them, emailed them to a friend that I just found the email recently, which was fun, and told him, hey, can you make this for me? And so he made them, and then, we partnered with Greg and his team, and the rest is history. The first version that we made did not have a great taste, and just to use kind of a euphemism. It was, someone told me it tasted like a mixture of nail polish and kerosene. And so, and I think it's very hard, frankly, even for me, it's very hard to take something that you hope is going to increase your health when it tastes so artificial and chemical. But that being said, we and this is something that was great with Juvenescence, we went back to the drawing board and said, okay, we got to do better than this. And we found one which, without sounding self-promotional, I think is the best one on the market. It's the best tasting.
Agreed.
It really, there's no question. I defy anybody to do a blind test and buy other esters on the market and tell me that ours is not the best tasting. And it's actually one of the cheapest as well. So I think the combination, in my mind, means that we have something that I'm really excited and proud about. And the question now is, why should you use this? I use it every day. I put it in my coffee. Actually, it comes as a powder or as a liquid. As a powder, you can actually put in your coffee. It tastes like a creamer. It has no aftertaste. Takes a little while to get used to it in terms of your stomach. So I tell people to start with small doses. And, what benefit do I get from this? Part of it, so first we're doing a lot of clinical trials to demonstrate clinical trials, not only for well-being, but also for specific indications. And so those are all ongoing at the Buck. But immediately, I can guarantee, if you look at the name, it's called cognitive switch. And the reason is if you get to the point where, as you ramp up progressively, you take a full dose, it's like a switch. You feel it. I don't know if you had a chance to experience this, Jess, but
Yeah. With my ADHD, I've been prescribed Adderall before, but I don't like it because it makes me feel fuzzy. When I've taken this, I feel like it's like taking half an Adderall. Like I'm like, all of a sudden I'm sharp, I'm more focused.
It's funny that's funny that you say this, because some friends call me a high functioning ADHD. And it's true. I think, many of us in the world have these, agile minds, or really a lot of very busy minds. And you too, Greg. And that's exactly the point that I have. Actually, I was at dinner on Sunday, and a friend that had just started, he said, you should try to get this on college campuses. They're all taking crazy stuff, and here's something that's totally natural. It gives you the same effect. So that's something we have not explored with Greg, but there is a market for ADHD. There's an enormous literature in terms of beneficial effect of the ketogenic diet. And the two organs that are really love to use ketones are the brain and the heart. And so if you follow the lead, everything related to the brain, there's some evidence that people with bipolar disorders might be benefiting from the ketogenic diet. We know also that a ketogenic diet is a recognized treatment for some forms of epilepsy. This was discovered in the 1900s. And it's another indication, again, that some conditions might be really benefiting. And another way to think about ketones is our cells can use all kinds of nutrients, carbohydrate like sugar, or fat, lipids, and all of these, or ketones. It is a form of energy. All of these burn with different efficiency. And I tell people this is the equivalent of using your car and burning diesel, or 100 octane gas, or 87 octane. If you look at the progression, the worst nutrient for your body to burn is carbohydrates, unless you're exercising. Your muscles love glucose and sugar, carbohydrates. But the next best is fat, and the very top, the cleanest fuel that we can burn, is actually ketone bodies. And I suspect that some of the effects that we're seeing is a reflection of the fact that it's just a very clean fuel.
Wow, that's so great. I could spend maybe another half day or day just asking questions about that. Greg, I want to turn it back to you maybe for our final question here.
There's a couple of things to this. One is, when I first heard about this from Eric in 2018, and he was telling me about this, I said, well, we should all be on a ketogenic diet. And Eric goes, if you could live on avocados and macadamia nuts, and that's all you eat, have at it. That's what a ketone diet looks like, which wasn't very reassuring, because I like other stuff.
I agree.
And you also, we're coming out with a new coffee, literally, where we will premix the cognitive switch powder with the coffee, to create a hard coffee. And it absolutely, we're going after a younger demographic for that. Although the Alzheimer's, Parkinson patients have been writing us so many anecdotal notes from the children or their caregivers, saying how much this improves them when they're on this product because of the stimulant effect, Jess, that you described. So, and the nice thing about this is a clear indication of how a product can evolve from the Buck Institute into being available. There's going to be a blurring of the line that I know, Eric, you share with me between nutraceuticals and pharmaceuticals. The key to anti-aging unequivocally is prevention. So the products are going to have to be incredibly safe because you may have to take them for 40 years or 50 or 60 or 100. So it's imperative that we have these incredibly safe products like the ones that Eric has been working on. And then interestingly, that same product, which Eric's studies will tell you, you take it within 15 to 30 minutes of taking it, you will be in ketosis for the next 3 to 6 hours. We're now making one that will last 24 hours so we can actually use it for the heart and the brain where there's pathology, where there's actual disease. So these products are that potent. Eric is also working with Ohio State University. We got a $10 million grant from the Department of Defense for the product to begin to test it on military personnel. So there's so much going on in this sector. But I want to, and so as far as investing, here was something that just progressed very quickly to being available, and now will progress very quickly through clinical trials. What are you seeing right now that's most exciting to you coming out of the buck? What products do you say this is going to, like the senolytics, I know, as you say, game changer, if we can begin to get rid of these things because of all the pathologies you've listed. What other ones are coming out that people, investors should know? You got to take a look at this because this is going to be $100 billion a year drug, which is what these are when they work, like obesity, diabetes, drugs that have just come out.
You're asking me to pick between my children, and I can't do this. So
most people have a child they like best, Eric. They just lie.
Most people what?
Have a child they like best. They just lie about it.
So that sounds so mean. I have 3 wonderful children. I would never be able to say that. I love one of them better than the other. Some of them drive me more crazy than others, that's for sure. Anyway, let me see. I think, I don't know if I'm really ready to tell you one of the things that is the most exciting. One thing, because one of the things that has happened at the Buck is we've taken sort of I don't know how to describe this, but you think about the aging space. Aging is an incredibly pleomorphic process. So there's not one cause of aging, at least not one that we know about. So we are hitting on everything. With 300 people, we can afford to we don't want to bet the house on senescence and say this is all and be all. It certainly is something important, no question about it. And we're still working on novel senolytics and so on. But we're also working on many other aspects of the biology. Autophagy, we've talked about this. Stem cell biology, epigenetics, that's really the focus of my lab. All of these topics are being studied, and every one of them has programs that I think are moving towards novel therapies in the future. And we don't have something that I'm ready to come and give you, Greg, and take to the bank and transform it into a drug. But, for example, we have another program together on NAD metabolism and CD38, which has emerged as the major enzyme that's responsible for degrading the NAD. And your audience probably has heard about NR and NMN, which are the supplements that are currently available if you want to replete your NAD level. So NAD is a critical, and maybe I can speak about NAD a little bit. That's actually a cool story emerging from the lab. If you think about NAD, this is, what's the name of that company that the supermarket used to take the money and bring it to the bank, like Loomis or these carriers? And so imagine, so this is what NAD does in the cell. It takes energy, energy, I would say currency, it would be the same in the economy, and it transports it from one place to the other, and it ensures that the economy works. Your energy is just, metabolism is just like the economy. You have to take energy and you have to move it around. And imagine that these carriers stop working within, 3 days, the whole thing, or they go on strike. The stores are, the stores are going to be piling up money. Things are not going to work very well in terms of your economy. Same thing happens with NAD. This is the role that it plays. It shuttles energy between different parts of the cell. And for reasons that were not clear until recently, NAD levels decrease during aging. And so the approach was, well, let's just piling more supplements that like NR and NMN who will raise the NAD levels. Well, it turns out that we've identified, and Eduardo Cini, a colleague also at Mayo Clinic, I mean, we've done this independently, have identified CD38 as a molecule that chews up NAD. It degrades it, and the level of CD38 increased during aging. So the question becomes, now you have a pool of NAD and you have a leak in a sink, and trying to give you the vision, and you have a leaky sink. You have CD38, leaking it. And what we're doing with the supplement is we just keep pouring water on top. So our approach is different. We're trying to block the leak, basically, by inhibiting CD38. And we created a company, again, with Juvenescence called Napa Therapeutics. And we have generated, 20 sub-nanomolar molecules that are extremely potent and highly selective at targeting CD38. And right now we are probably about a year and a half away from a phase 1 trial where we're going to put these drugs in humans and first establish their safety. This is the phase 1. But very quickly after this, we're going to go into phase 2, where we're going to start looking at some specific indications. And aging is not the first one because it's not recognized as a disease, but we are targeting a number of diseases in which there's a very high level of CD38 expression. And so that's another project in which I'm incredibly excited that we're really going to change something. We have data, for example, again, on CD38, playing a key role in Alzheimer's disease as well. When we study a mouse that is prone to Alzheimer's disease and we knock out CD38, we find it's protected. So lots of potential direction. We also have some evidence that CD38 might be playing a role in a number of autoimmune diseases, rheumatoid arthritis, inflammatory bowel disease, a whole series of diseases for which we have treatments, but not the best treatments. Many of them lead to immunosuppression and complications. So I think there's a unique commercial opportunity and frankly, a medical opportunity for us to make a huge difference. So if I had to pick my second favorite beyond ketones, it would be the CD38 as a target. Another piece of data we just published on, it turns out if you knock out CD38, mice become more fertile. They have larger number of eggs in their ovaries. So this brings up the possibility that this could become also a target in female reproductive aging. So really excited by this development as well.
And Jess, if that's right, you can see the breadth of it. And usually people are skeptical. I'm skeptical. I mean, cannabis was supposed to cure everything under the sun. And, and it's just not accurate. But because this is such a fundamental, one of the four main cellular pathways involved in aging, it really could have the profound effect that Eric says. And then we know that the, GLP-1 Ozempic, drugs are doing 100 to 150 billion, and they're projected to do 100 to 150 billion dollars a year. That's the sort of numbers we're talking about for this. So it has that sort of staggering, which is why all of our audience, you need to invest in this sector. Sorry, Eric, what were you going to say?
No, I agree. I mean, it's hard to imagine the scale of what is about to come in this field. And one simple reason is that when I spent an early part of my career working on HIV, and I would start my talk saying there are 30 million people infected with HIV. Therefore, the reason I would say this is a big market, 30 million. Now, I don't have to start my talk saying, there are 6 or 8 billion people that are aging today, and whatever we do is going to have a profound impact on humanity. And there is it's really an exciting time. There's so much hunger. This is something I did not anticipate when we made some of the early discoveries. This was 25 years ago in the biology of aging. We were initially so excited we thought everybody's going to be jumping and throw money at us, and nothing happened for 10 years because nobody believed us. And now, and this is normal. Scientists, especially our colleagues, scientists love to believe their own data, but they never believe anybody else's data. And so now, 20 years later, it turns out that we were right, and some of these discoveries are going to be transformational. And the question is, you see the whole public just embracing this, and there's a whole new movement. You're in California too, correct, Jess? Correct? You are in LA, from what I remember.
I spent years in LA. These days I'm outside of Park City, Utah, but I get
Park
down there
City,
quite
Utah.
a bit.
Nice. You have good taste. We'll have to go skiing one time. So it is. There's an incredible amount of interest, and I would say health is becoming a movement more than just a medical field. It's a movement. If you had told me 20 years ago that I would go to a dinner party like I did this Sunday, and before the appetizer, we had a cold plunge and a sauna, but it is becoming a regular occurrence. I mean, people are just becoming really interested in trying to discover, learn, and do whatever is good for their health, because I think it's the greatest privilege that we have at the end is to.
No kidding. I know Greg's so popular, he's got to get off this one and get on another podcast with a group from a pro athlete organization. So we're going to have to wrap this up, but it doesn't mean we're done. We're going to have you back so we can keep the conversation going.
You know my number. Love to
I
come
love
back.
it. So Eric, if people do want to look at donations or things like this for the buck, should they reach out to you? Should they go on the website? Where should they be going?
Probably, is there a place where you can leave my email contact? Just send it.
Yeah, and even why don't you just tell people right now?
The easiest one for people to remember is Eric Verdin, my name, first and last name, no period, @me.com.
Okay.
Next time, maybe I can actually do something even better. Let me show you this. Oops, where's your camera? You can actually take a picture, point your camera to this, and you'll have all of my contact information. Whoops.
Yeah. People, if you're on audio only, hop on YouTube and watch the end of this so you can take a picture and get Eric's QR code for his contact info. That's great.
Yeah, there's no donation button on my contact information. You don't have to worry. But get in touch with me. I think, one of my board members who joined told me something that was really important. He says, after I had been courting him for a while, he said, you're probably looking at me and says, I'm going to make a big donation, and I will. But I want you to think of me in 3 different ways: work, wisdom, and wealth. And he told me, and you will get them in this order. And so he's actually worked really hard for us, brought a lot of wisdom to everything we do. And finally, starting to write big checks. So for me, they're all equally important, meeting you, being able to enjoy your network, to share what we're doing with people, all of this. I think the buck is a gem in the middle of California, and I think I'm determined to really give it its full visibility and success and what it deserves.
Well, thank you for making the time with us this morning.
Delighted to be here, and thank you for the opportunity. And Greg,
bet.
stay out of trouble.